I always thought my dad was the kind of man who could never lie, strict, yes, but honest to the core. Growing up, I looked up to him. Whatever he said felt like the truth written in stone. So when he told me something that changed the way I looked at my own mom, I believed him. Without question. Without thinking twice. I thought I was doing the right thing, standing by him. But that one choice, trusting him blindly, led to the kind of heartbreak I never saw coming. It all started during a regular evening at home. Nothing felt out of place, until I caught a strange silence between my parents. They weren't fighting out loud, but something was clearly off. My dad sat me down and said things I didn't expect to hear. He claimed my mom had been unfaithful, said he'd seen proof, that he'd kept quiet for my sake, but couldn't anymore. I was shocked, confused, but I trusted him. He was my father. If he said it, it had to be true, right? I started pulling away from my mom. I didn't yell or confront her. I just stopped talking, stopped trusting. Every time she asked what was wrong, I just shrugged. I hated the idea of her cheating on us. I was angry, disappointed, and deeply hurt. And yet, she kept showing love, asking questions, trying to understand why her own child was becoming a stranger. But something didn't sit right. The more I watched her, the more I noticed the pain in her eyes. Not guilt, but confusion. Hurt. Like she didn't even know what was being held against her. And then, one day, I overheard a phone call that changed everything I thought I knew. It wasn't just about a marriage. It was about a lie so big, it had silently poisoned our entire family. And the worst part? I helped spread it. If I had just asked her. If I had just looked a little deeper. But by the time I started to question things, it was already too late to undo the damage. Or was it? That moment became the turning point, the start of a truth I wasn't ready for. What I discovered next completely shattered the image I had of my father. Growing up, I never saw my parents fight, not the kind of fights you see in movies or dramatic shows. They were quiet people. My mom was soft-spoken, always putting others first. My dad was more reserved, serious, but present. From the outside, we looked like a stable, ordinary family. That's why it shook me to the core when he told me about the affair. It just didn't fit the picture I had in my mind. But I pushed those doubts aside because he was my dad. And I wanted to believe him. He said things like, "She changed," or "She's been distant for months," and even, I didn't want to say anything, but "She's been texting someone behind my back." At the time, it sounded convincing. He never raised his voice, never looked angry, just tired. Almost broken. He made me feel like I was old enough to hear the truth, like I deserved to know. And that made me feel important. Like he trusted me with something serious. So, I took it as fact. After that conversation, everything started to shift. I started noticing things, or maybe just convincing myself I did. If my mom smiled at her phone, I'd assume the worst. If she stayed out a little late, my mind would race. But I never asked her. I just let those ideas grow inside me until I could barely look her in the eye. And she noticed. She tried to talk. She'd ask if something happened, if school was stressing me out, or if I was upset with her for some reason. But I kept brushing her off. And the guilt? It didn't even register at the time. I thought I was protecting my dad. I thought I was doing the right thing. But then came that call. I was walking past the guest room, and I heard his voice, my dad's voice, on the phone. But what he was saying didn't sound right. He was talking about my mom, saying things that didn't match what he'd told me. And the person on the other end? I recognized the name. It wasn't a friend or family member, it was someone I'd never even heard of before. Something in his tone, in the way he talked when he thought no one could hear, it scared me. For the first time, I felt something I'd never felt toward my own father: doubt. That was the beginning of everything unraveling. I couldn't stop thinking about that phone call. It kept replaying in my head, word for word, tone for tone. My dad had said things that felt cold, calculated, like he was planning something, not reacting to a betrayal. He wasn't hurt. He was in control. And the way he mentioned that person's name, like they'd been working together on something, made my stomach twist. Suddenly, I wasn't sure who was telling the truth anymore. At dinner that night, I watched both of them closely. My mom was quiet, but that wasn't new. She tried to make small talk, asked if I wanted more rice, if I had finished my assignments. My dad, on the other hand, seemed completely normal, too normal. Like nothing was eating at him. He didn't even glance at her. He just scrolled through his phone and nodded occasionally. It felt staged. Forced. Like they were both in the same house but living in different worlds. I started noticing other things too. My mom had become more anxious lately. She'd flinch slightly when the doorbell rang. Her phone was always close, but she didn't hide it. She would leave it unlocked on the counter, screen up, like she had nothing to worry about. It made me think, if she really was hiding something, wouldn't she be more careful? Then there was my aunt, my mom's sister. She stopped by one afternoon while my dad was out. She pulled me aside, said she was worried about my mom, that she hadn't been herself lately. I wanted to ask why, but something held me back. I was scared of hearing more things I wasn't ready for. Before she left, she looked me in the eye and said, "Sometimes people get blamed just because they're quiet. Don't let silence fool you." That line stayed with me. And just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, I found something, an envelope tucked inside my dad's desk drawer while I was looking for a charger. It wasn't addressed. Just a few printed photos and a handwritten note that didn't make much sense at first glance. But the handwriting wasn't my dad's or mom's. And the photos? They weren't of my mom at all. Everything I thought I knew started to collapse. And in the middle of all this, I realized I'd never even asked the one question that mattered most: why would my dad lie? I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything: the phone call, the photos, the note. I kept going over the handwriting in my head. It looked feminine, a little messy but rushed, like someone was desperate to say something but afraid to write it down. And the photos, none of them were what my dad had described when he claimed mom was cheating. They looked like pictures taken from far away, blurry, mostly of some woman I didn't recognize, definitely not my mom. It felt like pieces of a puzzle that didn't match the picture he painted. The next morning, I acted like everything was normal. I needed more time to think. I started avoiding both of them, pretending to be busy with school, staying longer at the library, even eating meals in my room. But deep down, I was starting to panic. What if my dad had lied? What if he'd turned me against my own mother just to cover something up? That evening, I finally confronted my aunt. I told her everything: what he had said, what I believed, and what I had found. She didn't look shocked. Instead, she closed the door, sat beside me, and said softly, "I always suspected something wasn't right. Your mom never said anything bad about him, but she's been shrinking in her own home for months now." Her words broke something in me. I felt angry, at my dad, but also at myself. I had blindly chosen sides without proof, without even talking to the person I was hurting most. My mom. And now I wasn't even sure who my dad really was anymore. The final push came that weekend. I came home early from a friend's house, and the front door was slightly open. I heard voices. My dad was talking to someone, not on the phone this time, but in person. The woman's voice was unfamiliar, but the way she said his name, it was too personal. I stayed hidden in the hallway, heart pounding, hearing fragments that made everything worse. She still doesn't know, does she? The woman asked. And he replied, it's better that way. Let her keep blaming herself. In that moment, everything made sense, and nothing did. The truth was right in front of me, but I didn't know if I was ready to face it. All I knew was, this lie went deeper than I ever imagined. I stood frozen in the hallway, barely breathing. That one sentence, let her keep blaming herself, rang in my ears like an alarm I couldn't silence. My dad's voice was steady, almost too calm, like he had rehearsed it 100 times. And the woman? I still couldn't see her, but her tone said enough. She wasn't just some random person. She knew him well, maybe better than I ever did. My heart was pounding, and even though every part of me wanted to storm into that room, I couldn't move. I needed more. I tiptoed back out the door and circled around to the side window. The curtain was slightly open, just enough. That's when I saw her. She wasn't someone I recognized. Probably in her mid-30s, well-dressed, confident. Not someone you'd expect to be part of a secret. But the way she looked at my dad, it wasn't casual. It was familiar. Intimate. And then she handed him something small. A flash drive. He looked at it, nodded, and put it in his jacket pocket like it was nothing. I felt sick. What could be on it? And why hide it? My brain couldn't keep up with all the questions racing through me. Who was this woman? What did she mean about someone blaming themselves? Was she talking about my mom? Me? Later that night, I couldn't help myself. I waited until everyone was asleep and carefully searched my dad's jacket. The flash drive was still there. I grabbed it and ran it up to my room. My hands were shaking as I plugged it into my laptop. There were only 3 files on it, all videos. The first one opened with poor audio, but clear enough. It was security footage, maybe from an office. I leaned closer. There was my dad, arguing with someone, another man. Their voices were muffled, but at one point, my dad grabbed the guy by the collar. The second video was worse. It showed that same man confronting my dad again, this time with papers. And in the corner of the screen, that same woman stood silently, watching. It was clear something illegal or dangerous was going on. It had nothing to do with my mom. But the third video was what broke me. It showed my mom, at work, smiling, helping a customer. Nothing dramatic, nothing shady. Just her being herself. A date and time were stamped in the corner. That same exact day, my dad had told me she was with someone else. That's when it hit me. The whole cheating story? It was a cover. A distraction. He didn't want me to look closer at him, so he gave me something else to believe. Something personal. Something that would hurt just enough to make me stop asking questions. But now I had more questions than ever. What was he really hiding? Who was that man in the videos? And what did the woman mean when she said, keep blaming herself? I thought I was getting close to the truth, but this wasn't just about lies anymore. Something deeper, darker, was buried beneath it all. And I was about to dig it up. I didn't sleep that night. The videos kept replaying in my mind, every detail now making sense in a completely different way. My dad hadn't just lied, he had created an entire false reality, and I'd lived in it without question. By morning, I knew I couldn't keep this to myself. I needed answers, not guesses. So for the first time, I went straight to the person I should have trusted all along, my mom. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. I told her everything. The accusation. The silence. The flash drive. Her face went pale, not with guilt, but with sadness. She didn't cry. She just looked at me and said, I always wondered when you'd start asking me what really happened. Then she opened a drawer and pulled out a file I had never seen before, legal documents, reports, names I didn't recognize. And at the top, one name that stopped me cold, the man from the video. He was a former business partner of my dad's. Years ago, they'd started something together, but it went south. According to the report, my dad had taken money, more than I could imagine, and pinned the blame on his partner. That's why the man had confronted him in the video. And the woman? She was the investigator helping dig up the truth. But somehow, my dad had turned the story around. He'd used me as a shield, telling me my mom was the one hiding something, while he cleaned up his mess behind the scenes. I felt sick. I had turned cold toward my mom while she was the one quietly protecting me from all of it. She'd kept quiet, even when it hurt, because she thought it would be worse if I knew the truth about my own father. Just when I thought everything had come full circle, my mom handed me a final envelope. "There's something else you should see," she said. Inside was a photo of my dad and that same woman, years ago. But this wasn't business. It was personal. They were together. Smiling. Holding hands. The final twist wasn't just the lie about the affair. It was who the affair was really about. He hadn't accused my mom to protect me, he had done it to cover his own betrayal. And in that moment, everything shattered, again. The silence that followed was heavier than any words. I stared at that photo, feeling like the last piece of the puzzle had finally dropped into place. The woman I had seen with him wasn't just helping cover something up, she had been a part of his life long before any of this began. The betrayal wasn't only about business or family, it was personal. He had twisted everything to hide his truth, and I had believed him. I had helped protect his secret by turning my back on the one person who never stopped loving me, my mom. I apologized to her that day. Not just with words, but by truly listening, maybe for the first time. She told me she had found out about the affair years ago but stayed because she thought it was better for me. She hoped things would get better. But when he started spinning lies about her, she realized the man she once knew was gone. She never fought back because she didn't want to put me in the middle. That broke me all over again. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. My dad eventually found out I knew the truth. He tried to explain, to make excuses, but it was too late. The damage was done. My mom filed for divorce quietly, without drama. She said, "Sometimes peace is more powerful than revenge." And I understood that now. Choosing silence when you're right isn't weakness, it's strength. I moved in with her, and we started to rebuild what had been lost. Slowly, but with honesty this time. We talked more, laughed more, and cried when we needed to. I also reached out to my aunt and thanked her for planting those seeds of doubt when I needed them most. The family wounds were deep, but healing finally felt possible. Looking back, the biggest mistake I made wasn't believing a lie, it was not asking questions when things didn't feel right. Sometimes, the truth hides in silence, in body language, in things left unsaid. And sometimes, the people we trust the most are the ones we need to look at twice. I believed my dad. But that belief cost me more than I ever imagined. And yet, in losing what I thought was true, I found something stronger: clarity, truth, and a second chance to do right by the people who really loved me.